Ay, 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 ay. My life been hella crazy, hella crazy. You building bridges, I'm just tryna renovate. It ain't about where you from, but it's about where you.
Welcome. It's been a long time coming, man. This is volume 1, episode 1 of the Reclamation Point Podcast. I'm your host, Moetown Lee, and I got my brother.
Riding shotgun, Dr. Ed Garnes in the house.
Um, and the reason this is a long time coming, and the reason we decided to do this podcast, this started as a discussion between my brother and I. A problem that he kind of felt that I was having, and I didn't realize that I was having it. I'm this big Rams fan, and so the Rams are at the Super Bowl, and they've won the Super Bowl, and I'm there, and I'm getting all these calls and these texts, all of these things about, and people just feeling this like super level of excitement, and I'm not excited as I felt like I should be. I'm just cool. And I was like, you know what? I think something is wrong with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand why I'm not as excited as I should be. And so the next day, I called Ed. I said, brother, I got to talk to you. So we get on the phone and we talk just as we do. We just
Shooting the breeze,
just shoot
brothers,
the breeze.
Barbershop conversation.
And close to the end of the conversation, I said, Ed, so yeah, let me talk to you about like how I feel in my mental. He was like, we've been talking about this the whole time.
For the past hour or so, right?
He said, and based on our conversation, he revealed some things about me that when I got off, I was like, well, damn, really? He said, you based on the answers to the questions in our conversation, I could deem you as like clinically depressed and suffering from anxiety. Now I didn't tell him, but that made me feel actually more depressed and anxious.
I have my version that I would give after you finish.
that had me feeling more a higher level of anxiety and angst and like because as a black man, I always equated depression to suicide. And so, but that woke me up. It made me, as a person I respected, as somebody I looked at like, this is my little brother saying this to me, and I respect his opinion. I was like, all right, I need to take heed of his professional opinion and seek some sort of help and see where this thing can go. And so we here, and so this first episode, Ed and I wanted to talk about the beginnings, like why we here, how we got here, to the point that we're having these discussions. So
I have my read if you want me to give my spiel.
You know what? So before we go into the spiel, I think let's both tell the people that don't know us a little bit, about us individually. So,
well, I defer to my big brother. I'll let you go first.
So the people that don't know, my name, of course, as we said in the opening, my name is Moetown Lee. I am a industry vet. I co-produce probably one of the largest black music festivals in the country. I've worked with everybody from Kendrick Lamar to Janet Jackson to whoever, you name it. I've been in the industry for let me date myself X amount of years. Just say, you know what I'm saying? It's double digits.
Yeah.
I'm from the inner city. I was born and raised in Compton, California, and then moved to a place called Rialto, which was the suburbs, where a place that was actually, to me, I love it, but we face more like hardships there than we did in Compton. So moved to Atlanta to pursue, continue to pursue the industry dream. And this is where we are. As you can see, we both black men. You know what I'm saying?
Really? I thought I just had a paint job.
And through my travels, I met some amazing people who've become family, that being Ed. So Ed, tell us about.
Well, I am Dr. Ed Garnes. I am ATL, born and raised, steeped in the red clay. So I have a doctorate degree in psychology from a university that's getting no press, but I'm a Cal Berkeley trained clinician, right? But also, besides being a therapist, I have, like Moetown, worked in the arts and entertainment industry as a multimedia journalist for double-digit decades. I've known Moetown half my life, so we dating each other right now, right?
Right.
So I also am the founder of From Afros to Shell Toes, a community organization that works with mental health and tries to make therapy, emotional healing, cool for Black folks through the means of cultural productions.
And which is amazing in its own right, because I think that what we're doing, it makes me nervous to a degree, but it makes me happily nervous because we started this like as a conversation amongst friends, right? Amongst two brothers. And then we started doing these Instagram conversations, which was easy because I'm having a conversation with my brother. So in that process and in learning about me and exposing like our personal lives to people on Instagram, people started reaching out.
Yes.
And they were like, hey, listen, like, I don't know if you know what you're doing, but it's helping me. It's helping me learn about myself. It's opening doors, it's opening eyes for other men and other African Americans in particular to be okay with, going to therapy and seeking help. For me, it's always been taboo because, coming from a place where, therapy wasn't really for Black people. We had church. We had, prayer. So when things go on for us, and the things that happen in my life, I never really, the help I found or the lack of help was like, hey, you pray about it and it'll be all right. But you better not cry about it. You better not show no emotions because emotions are for the weak. And going, 40-something years thinking about that or thinking like that and that thought, you don't understand, like, it's years and years of, like, suppressing your feelings and not dealing with, like, your feelings and dealing with things that actually happen in your life. And so we got to this point to where we're having this conversation and we were like, you know what? We're exposing it to our friends, but let's talk about it and expose it to more people. Let's do this to help, and not only ourselves, but to help other people. So this is how we got here. Of course, Ed's journey here is a little different. It's a little different from mine. Us both being from the inner city, we had, and we respect each other's upbringing, but they have like as Black men, you have the similarities, but then also as Black people from two different places, you have these contrasts and like these differences of what you experience growing up. And so I think that's what actually brought us closer as brothers, because it's two different perspectives. His is always, he is coming from a loving therapeutic position, but also, you know what I mean, somebody just like, hey, man, you know what I'm saying?
I'm black. You know what I'm saying? Extra black.
This brother is one Dick Gregory quote away from being Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying? So, and I love it. You know what I'm saying? And I love that about him. And you know, and for those who knows who I am, they know that, you know, I am, you know, extremely pro-black, and it's not against anybody else. It's just that I think that self-love, I learned that self-love is the most important love that you can have, and without that level of self-love in our community, that you know, we lack the ability to honestly like reach out and love other people. But you know, but in the process of the self-love, we're here and we're talking about mental health. It's funny that, and I'll let Ed talk about this. There's so many levels of mental health that affect our community, not mainly, but more importantly, black men. I think I love the sisters. I love the sisters. But I think the sisters' level of consciousness or like self-understanding is way higher than ours when it comes to like therapy and seeking help. I think that the masculine or the masculinity that we've been taught, we've been taught to suppress feelings. We've been taught to, be tough and be this and be that. But in all actuality, is that the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think about how we got here, and it's lived experience and a little bit of therapy and research that got us here, right? So Moetown is my big brother, but also being a trained clinician, I look at signs, and so he gave his spiel, but this is what was happening. My big brother was ignoring me, right? And so I knew that he was going through something, because when you start to withdraw socially, that is normally a sign that something is going on. So Moetown had experienced several losses in his life, right? And with each loss, I would reach out, brother, are you okay? Normally Moetown hits you right back, and the brother went ghost, okay? Like if I had a check for him, he would have lost $1 million, all right? So that let me know that something was going on. And also with the Rams, being in the Super Bowl, I'm not seeing no posts. He not telling no jokes. He not like, your Falcons didn't make it this time. So I'm like, okay, he's not passionate about things that he was passionate for. So there were certain red flags. And so since Moetown is my brother and we're so close, you can't counsel somebody close to you because you need emotional distance to counsel. So what I ended up doing was just asking some consciousness-raising questions that I slid into the conversation. He didn't know what I was doing, right? No, but that was just my therapeutic training, to just ask some conscious-raising questions to have him talk out some things. And so after our conversation, what I basically told Moetown is that, what he described was the symptoms that could be linked to depression and anxiety. Depression, low mood, lack of satisfaction, the fact that he's withdrawing from things that he normally enjoys. That's a depressive symptom right there. And then the anxiety is excessive worry. Moetown takes care of the world. So you got One Music Fest, Kendrick Lamar, you got all these things going on. And so when you take care of others, givers rarely give to themselves. And so those were the telltale signs. So after we had that conversation, I think because, he trusted me, and when I put those terms, depression and anxiety, I think it made it very real for you. Like, okay, right. If Ed has called me to the carpet and my little brother is this concerned, then I need to do something. So that's what brings us, to the conversation, because for black men, you have to be able to decipher what is going on. Like Moetown didn't say, hey, I'm suffering from cognitive dissonance and, my mood is very low and not sustainable. He didn't say that, right? So you got to pick up on the clues in social withdrawal, not being passionate about things that this brother loved and ran. So those were just telltale signs.
Yeah, one of those things. I don't think that in therapy, and just take it back to the beginning, give a backstory of how I personally got here. In 2019, I lost my little brother. He was the second brother that I actually had essentially lost. But in the process of losing my brother, like, this is a backstory. I actually raised, my brothers. It's more of a, like, I'm their big brother, but with the age gap, I was more like, the only kind of father that they essentially knew. So me being the protector, like, and losing him, I felt, that failure, right? And this was after. I'll go back before that. So for the first time, in my life, 2017, 2018-ish, I was just feeling this pain, right? I remember, I was back and forth, dealing back and forth to the doctor because I was, I had this disease, Crohn's disease, and shout out to my big brother Bear, who also battles the disease. He was like helping me through it, but at the same time, this was like, the first time I'm like, oh, I've been pretty much 100% physically fit, my whole life, and now I'm dealing with this, and it's out of nowhere. So I'm doing these treatments, I'm doing all these things, and I'm in New Orleans, and I'm at Essence, and my stomach is killing me, right? You know what I'm saying? And I was like, something ain't right. You know what I mean? Like, this ain't the Crohn's kind of pain. So I'm back and forth to the doctor, and essentially found out that I had cancer. But in that time of them telling you got cancer, you have like the medical doctors, and then you got the mental, like, counselor doctors that you actually talk to. The medical doctors is like, hey, listen, you're going XYZ, we're going to fight this, you're going to be all right, this early stages is cool. Then you go see these counselors, right? Now, what they don't tell you is the counselor does not know the level, like, the stage you're in. They don't know, like, what physical condition you're in or anything. They're just having this basic conversation with you. So the counselor is talking to me about having affairs in order and what do you do and all of these things. And so I'm listening to this person talk, and I leave this office. And my partner calls me, and I break down. Right? I pull to the side. I break down. Yeah. And as strong as I tried to be during this whole time, like, it bothered me, because for the first time in my life, I felt vulnerable.
Yes.
Like, you can take all the money away from me. You can take all these accolades, all of these things. It wouldn't bother me, because I grew up under the harshest conditions. I feel like I can make it through. I got enough relationships. I got enough friends. I have enough knowledge of the business. I can make another dollar. Money will never bother me. That's just not my life. I live way below my means. I don't have to work again. That's not a problem, right? I feel like I'm just this guy who experienced these things. Like, I grew up in a gang-infested area. You know what I mean? I seen the challenges. I seen people come and go. I've been shot at. All of these things, the threats of my life won't bother me. You know what I mean? That doesn't bother me. But for the first time, I felt like I wasn't in control. Like, now I have to go through this process of, like, and not only was I not in control, because at first I was like, I ain't gonna tell nobody. I'm just gonna deal with it.
Yeah, I didn't know for a long time.
You know what I mean? And in that time of not telling nobody, I realized how selfish because it was me being like going in my personal protective mode, right? So I'm like, I don't want to tell nobody because I don't want people to look at me like I'm weak. You know what I mean? And like that I'm not this, tough persona guy, and they like, oh, you got cancer, and they always look at me like I'm the cancer guy. But then also, I didn't want to have like be exposed to like depending on other people, not to and I learned in that time when people found out, and the things that just treating me like I'm regular, just like coming over, calls, taking the trips to the doctor, and all of these things that made me see like what I mean. I'm not I'm not as strong as I thought I was, right? So that began this thing, and that began this kind of like tailspin into this place, right? And in the process of going in this dark place, we are now, I literally found out like February 26th that like you in remission, you don't have to come back no more, you good. You know what I'm saying? Like 2 weeks later, like I go to California to see my family, and then my brother, has this seizure, this stroke, this unexplained medical situation, and he never comes out of it, right? And so in that process, I'm like, damn. Then we hit the pandemic, right? And then this whole thing with this pandemic, I realized like, bro, I was happy it was a pandemic, right? And this is odd, like this is crazy, because me being happy that it was a pandemic, not because that people were dying and the health risks and all that, but I didn't have to make excuses to be around people. You know what I mean? Like I can be at home and not deal with people and not like have to be on. You know what I mean? I realized now that I was tired of being on, all the time.
Yeah, I mean, what you describing is trauma. We tend to think of trauma like a gunshot wound, death in the family, earthquakes, natural disasters, but Black life is traumatic. And so with each trauma, you're trying to reconcile, right? You're trying to reconcile who you are as a man, right? And so to give you an understanding, of why this masculinity thing is so deep for Black men is that, we have very bootleg definitions of masculinity that we learn from white men and from American society, right? Because the thing that you are taught is that vulnerability, emotional expression is weakness, right? But vulnerability and emotional expression and the ability to process through trauma is actually strength. But as men, we are not, especially as Black men, we are not taught that. So if anything, one of our goals is to give some elasticity to this whole manhood and masculinity design and give Black men the space to be vulnerable, because I look at my life whenever I have hit hard times, from getting robbed to them messing with me in my program. Like people think, the one thing that I think bonds me in Moetown grew up in Compton and in these areas in LA. I grew up in Atlanta. In the Black bourgeoisie, right? I'm not supposed to have trauma, right? But Moetown can tell you, growing up how I grew up does not make you bulletproof from trauma, right? So even though we have different experiences, I grew up around the Black bourgeoisie of Atlanta, we have similar experiences because the gender racism that Black men experience is worldwide, right? So what unifies us is that if I'm driving down the street and police come behind me and I'm in East Point, right? They are not. They are not doing a scan. Let's check and see how many degrees he has. Where did his father go to school? His father went to Morehouse. Okay, right. That's gonna absolve him from me pulling him over. They see me as a black man. So the one thing that unifies me and Motown's experiences is the gender racism that black men go through. The racism of being both black and man in an American society that is intent on forecasting our demise. And so that's what unifies it.
Right, and so with everything, with as a man and as men and as we have to, when we face these things that affect our mental health, our mental well-being, we have to get to a point where we reclaim our mental health, right? Which is how we actually came up with the name Reclamation Point, because we have, we had to get to the point to where we were reclaiming, like, yeah. I'm okay. You know what I mean? I'm working towards being okay. I am reaffirming and addressing, my mental well-being, the point to where I'm okay and I'm able to deal with some other, that we're okay. We're able to deal with other things, other people. We're able to take on other people's problems because we're at a point where, you know what, we're all right. Now, what I've learned is, like, this thing it's an ongoing, learning process, because you learn so much about you. Mm-hmm. And for everybody out there who thinks that, first of all, listen, depression, let's talk about the perception of depression, right?
Okay. Where you want to go?
Because my perception of depression before I got to this point was like, you on the brink of suicide. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, or like you at a place where you can't get out of, or like you weak. Like, man, you can't shake that shit off. Like, what's up with that? Like, that was my perception of depression. Okay. Your perception as a professional, like, what is depression like?
So depression is more nuanced. I think because black men, we are playing the game every day, right? And we can't be vulnerable in spaces, especially in white spaces that are very problematic on a racial level. Like, we wear a mask, right? And so in wearing these masks, we end up being high functioning yet depressed, right? Mm-hmm. So we tend to think of like media versions of depression, like suicide, or you're staring at the wall, woe is me, right? But you can be about your hustle with One Music Fest, be with Janet, and you could be depressed. And everyone around you will not know that you're depressed, because you can be high functioning and be depressed. But essentially, depressed is like things like sadness, right? And an unescapable sadness. And then sometimes an unexplained sadness, meaning that you sad and don't even know why. Right? You could be with Halle Berry and you like, oh my God, my life is over. But she's right there, right? You know what I'm saying? So unexplainable sadness. I think what trips people up is the unexplainable sadness can be part of depression, where you can't even articulate why you're sad, right? And then manifested in you what you were talking about when the activities that bring you joy. If I ever tell you I have stopped drinking sweet tea, call my peoples, because something is wrong. Because why? I'm so associated with sweet tea. If you Google my name, sweet tea is right next to it. Okay, all right. So when you're not passionate about things that always brought you joy, that's another telltale sign that you have depression. Sleep disturbance. So sleeping too much, not sleeping enough. Weight fluctuation. Right. So how I knew I was going through it on a depression level in the 7 years that I was in my PhD program, my weight fluctuated from being skinny to being, I'm all over the place. I can't even dress myself because it depends on what month, how depressed I am, where my weight gonna be, all right? So weight fluctuation, either up or down, can be a sign of depression. Other things that might magnify depression, especially for black men and black people, responses to a racist and unforgiving system manifests itself in unexplainable sadness, irritability, and things that lead to depression. So any black person at any time is carrying symptomology for depression and anxiety is excessive worry at its core, right? Unmanageable. So just our lives as black people, we're carrying that. So just imagine as things happen, traumas happen, that's what we're dealing with. And without therapy, you have no way to reconcile it. And it's funny that you talked about me being one Dick Gregory, a quote from Malcolm X, how I got to therapy. They was trying to kill my black tail in college. So I go to therapy to deal with death threats of white folks trying to kill me, right? So that's what brought me to therapy. And so me going to therapy is how I ended up changing. Well, I still got my major in journalism undergrad, but that's what led me to the counseling profession, was me having to go to therapy to reconcile death threats, but all these other things coming out when I was in therapy, and I had a black therapist that was able to draw that out like an auntie. And she's like, oh, that's depression, that's anxiety, that's family system stuff, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what got me into therapy. They wanted to kill me, bro, for speaking up for black folk.
And I think that is we all have to get to the point to where it's being faced. I don't know, there's no blueprint and no timeline to say, hey, you got to get to the point to like reclaim. You have to get to the point where now you have to seek therapy and all of this, right? Because it's just, some people may have one drink and then they need help after one drink, right? Because of just genetics and whatever it may be, or that feeling that person has from that one drink. Some people can have a million drinks and still honestly don't look at it like they have a problem, or they have a problem, right? It's still under control. So there's no blueprint to get to the point to where, like, all right, I need to seek therapy, I need to seek help, right? Personally, I don't know because there's other people before I got to the point where like I was like receptive about therapy. There's other people who've came to me and talked to me about therapy, right? I'm like, well, maybe but those people weren't like me, right? Those people, their life experiences weren't like mine. They weren't black men. Yeah. So I was not even receptive to hearing it. No fault of theirs. It was just, I'm like, you're a woman, like, you weak. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're supposed to be in therapy. Or like, how can this person talk to me about this? Like, he ain't never been through what I've been through. Like, exactly. Like, I done seen all this stuff and I'm still here, right? And then I had the other side, like, therapy. Nigga, you tripping. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? And so you have those, and then you have this percentage of, like, that people just dealing with their own particular things that they just don't care either way. Like, if there's this thing in relationships where women look at it like he just don't want to, or he just isn't that. They don't understand a lot of times that we don't. It's not that we don't want to. We just don't know how. Don't have this like mental capacity to get to the point to where they feel like we need to be. You know what I mean? In this relationship or wherever it is.
I think about the advertisements for therapy. They're very whitewashed. When I think of therapy, even though I've been, a master's level clinician for over 20 years, when I think of therapy, I think of all those notions of an older white brother with glasses in the corner saying, "So Moetown, that's our notions of therapy, right?" So for black men, you have to create a compelling advertisement. The best advertisement for therapy is to take a strength-based approach and tell black men, you've been to therapy. what I do with black men, have you ever played a sport? Guy might say, yeah, Coach Washington, that was my man coming up, right? I said, when you were having problems, I'm sure that Coach Washington not only helped you on the court, but he helped you go through some things in your life as a young black man. Yeah, my parents got separated. I stayed with him 6 months. What he is providing for you is therapeutic intervention. All right, he is helping you mentally process traumas that you are experiencing, right? So your coach, those were therapeutic things that your coach was doing. Any black man goes in a barbershop and will spill their life story. You know what I'm saying? My girl done left me. I got $2. You don't know anybody in the barbershop, right? But that is a space where you tell everything, right? Mm-hmm. Those are therapeutic conversations. If you've ever sat on a porch, I don't know where y'all sat in Compton, but in the South, it was a porch, right? There was some sulfur 8 and grandma was parting your hair, talking to you, right? Therapeutic conversations. If you've ever been to church, and the black church used to be about mental liberation. And so why in the civil rights movement that faith was necessary, because the faith gave you coping strategies to deal with the things that you was going through. So when you give those advertisements that you've already had exposure to therapy, most black men say, oh, that's what therapy is? Yes. So the advertisement has to be different, and it has to come from someone that you trust. Because when we had a conversation where I asked you those conscious raising questions, you only entertained it because we had a relationship. If we didn't have a relationship, you'd be like, you little intrusive sucker. Why you asking me all these deep questions?
I asked you if I should. Yeah, right.
So it was the respect that you had for me that facilitated what me and Moetown talk a lot about, is the invitation to have a therapeutic conversation. When you invite black men instead of indict black men, you can have a conversation.
I think that's an important valid point. Because I felt like it was an indictment.
Yes.
I felt like the only time people talk about like therapy or you seeking help was when it was like in relation to something that has some in relation to them. You know what I mean? Like when women suggested this is like, oh, maybe you should seek therapy. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, oh, you saying that because
you saying I'm crazy, Sarah? You know what I'm saying?
Because we got to the point where like I'm not mentally open for like this thing right here. Mm-hmm. So you're saying, oh, I should seek therapy or whatever. But that's how I took it. Yeah. I don't necessarily, I don't want to say that this is how I took it. Mm-hmm. Of course you're going to tell me to go to therapy, like, because you go and you think that you're just so deep and all this bullshit, right? So I was not receptive to it.
Yes.
It took me getting to a place where I'm like, I can't get out of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, mm-hmm. It took me experiencing things that I knew I would find so much joy and jubilation in. Yes. And not being that person and not being that happy about this, to understand that I'm not in a good place.
And also, I hoped when you were going through stuff, I hope that I pestered you enough that it stayed on your mind. Because I was trying to create, this reflection point where at some point you'd be like, you know what? If he keep reaching out to me, like something must be off. So also, me feeling a responsibility to you as my big brother and another black man to always continue to check in.
Yeah, and that is a thing that what made me be really receptive and accepting that of the place that it was coming from, because people don't really ask men, especially black men, are you okay?
Oh yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Like, they may talk in a physical sense, like, oh, I twist my ankle. Oh, you okay? My nose is running. Yeah, all right, you feel better. But the really deep, are you okay?
Yeah.
we don't ask each other, or we don't talk about this amongst each other. Like, hey, brother, you all right? Now I understand and got to the point to where like, you all right, dog? And even when I ask people, hey, you need help or you need anything, I send a text or phone call after like, hey, this ain't one of those surface "Are you okay?" calls.
Yeah.
Like this isn't a surface "Are you okay?" text. Like, are you really okay? You know what I mean? Because being in this industry, I've personally seen and lost so many people in this like entertainment industry. And people look back and you like, this person had it all. Like, you know what I mean? This person I thought was living this life and this person, you know, has taken his own life. And in my misunderstanding of what depression is and unknowingly not knowing what mental like health or mental health awareness is, I also looked at it like, you did that. Like, he was weak as hell for doing that. You know what I mean? Because I was taught, like, hey, you commit suicide, you going to hell, you weak, like this shit. But I didn't know, like, maybe if somebody would have, like, when they say check on your strong people, you know, people like, oh, this person had it all. Why would he do something like that? But what's having it all? You think that, you know, we think that having all of this money and stuff like that, because, you know, again, I've made money and probably at the point I've made the most money in my life, I felt the most miserable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a reason for it.
And it was even worse because I'm like, I'm making all this money, I should be happy. I'm not.
Yeah, but the reason why is it's a value system that's being perpetuated in the entertainment industry that does not match an African centered or black value system. And I'm gonna show you how. So the entertainment industry we've both worked in, me as a journalist, you on the management and production side. Individualism is not a black value. That's a Western world and white value. Individualism rules the entertainment industry. The accumulation of wealth is not a black value. You right? The accumulation of wealth is a very Western world and white value. So the values in which we have to work in entertainment are in direct conflict with us as black people. We are a collectivist culture, meaning that it's about the community. But if you want to be successful in the entertainment industry, you have to be individualistic. So that creates psychological tension. And for black folks, it's not about the accumulation of wealth. It's about if Moetown gonna eat, Ed gonna eat, and vice versa. That's a community orientation. You have to be individualistic and about the accumulation of wealth to make it. So that psychological, now this is cognitive dissonance where there's a mismatch between what you believe and your actions and all that. So it creates this psychological warp zone that we are in, especially as black men, because we're already in conflict with natural black and African-centered values, and we have to create a way to make it that's based on principles that really go against our spirit. That's why most of the time in entertainment, we all reach that conflict. We like, I can't do it no more.
Yeah.
And that's why. Because it's the value systems that are perpetuated that upset us.
That is, I mean, there's a lot to take in because we, as men, especially as black men, you know, a lot of times people, today's society, amongst, you know, us and others, like, it's based on, it's predicated on the financial value.
It is.
Right? What you bring to the table. And that equates this level of like masculinity. Who has more, and what can he do? And essentially, what we don't understand is that creates this the quote unquote toxic masculinity because I think like I have control because I have more, when it's just not necessarily true, because most of the heads, most of the in our times, in our people, most of the heads didn't obtain like a certain financial goal. They didn't have brother Martin, Malcolm, Nelson, outside of Marcus Garvey, but Marcus Garvey also died in debt. But Marcus Garvey, in his fight for liberation and self-liberation, was teaching financial literacy. And so when you look at these figures, you look at Fred Hampton and the Panthers, and all of these people, even somebody who I love and respect, even when you look at Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory didn't pass away rich, but he could have. He could have made millions off the Bohemian Diet. Yeah. And he was the first person with the fad diets. With South Beach and Atkins and all that. Dick Gregory had like that first powder, the shake, and all of these things. But those things were never important to him, yes. Right? And when they passed away. Each one of them passed away with the highest level of regard and respect.
Because that's what we value as Black people, is communal impact over finance. But what happens in the entertainment industry, the values are flipped. So you take a person who has communal values and they have to make decisions, right? So the artist that comes from the community, I think one of my other big brothers and mentors who I have seen maintain their integrity throughout is Brother Stick and M1 from Dead Prez, right? They represent uncompromising African-centered values, and you may not notice them in publics, right? But they have maintained a certain level of African-centered values that place them in reverence to people that understand what they're doing. Now, if you look at them from a commercial standpoint, or you look at them as far as do they exhibit individualism and want to be in places that stars are supposed to be, that's not their value.
Right.
And so we consider them to be less than in some circles because they do not promote values that get you promoted in the entertainment industry.
And that's the thing, going back to the name and original, like our point of actually creating this conversation, creating this podcast, creating, this dialogue, creating the Reclamation Point. It's not about Ed and I, you know what I mean? It's about opening up this, conversation and this dialogue for others to go and seek help and seek to reclaim like their mental health for well-being. Because, and we'll get into this in different episodes and online, the reason that we live in a state of the broken Black home and the Black relationships aren't able to be achieved is because a lot of times it's mental health. We spoke about this where, there's a lot of times that there's a lot of things that men have inside that have happened in these experiences where their mental well-being not being okay. So them not being okay on the inside, they're not going to be able to sustain a powerful and a positive relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Work, depression, men are 78% of all suicides. And the number of Black men and boys that actually committed suicide and tried suicide is alarming, and I don't think that those things are not being addressed. And with depression and suicide, it's not necessarily just going and doing something personally to you, but it's also not protecting yourself or putting yourself in a position where you're avoiding those things. We see we see the violence in our community with all these young black boys and, the shootings and these killings and all of these things. It's also a part, like, there's a mental health, like, component, because they don't feel protected, so they're not putting themselves in a position to where, like, their life is being protected because they don't care, because they personally don't care about themselves. And again, self-care and self-awareness is all, like, connected. And I don't think that, I think these are some of the things that we, want to address later on down the line, and be able to help, be able to have the brothers and the young brothers understand that what's going on. Me from a person that, lived it, and we'll have, guests on, but then Ed is a person that lived it, but also a person that's coming from his professional perspective. And I think that it's extremely important that we do.
And it's crazy because when I was talking about what our connection is that, we have this belief that the more education that you have and upbringing that you are going to rise and not be susceptible to some of the same things. Our experiences are the same. Even as black men that have a level of success, the more successful you are in whatever industry that you are in as a black man, the racism increases. So whether you're a college professor, whether you are in entertainment, whether you are a coach, right? No matter what industry in, the greater you are, the more pressure that you will experience from a racial standpoint. And me and Moetown talk about some of the stressors for black men all the time that lead to mental health issues. One of them is, how am I going to make money in a racist system, right? That's one stress that we have constantly. Another stress is just navigating the whole gender racism thing, being a black, being a man, and all of the realities that flow through that. Then the other one is our relationships. Our relationship with our parents, our relationships with our friends, our romantic relationships, and reconciling those, right? Those are just 3 stresses. I can name 100, right? You know what I'm saying? But those are just 3 major stresses that every black man experiences, no matter where you are in your life.
And I think that those points are important, and it's important that we actually have these conversations and address it. It is. I'll say this for anybody, especially for the brothers out there, because we created this for us. We created this for you. It is extremely hard to have this conversation and just putting it out there to let you know, like, look, all right, I'm not all right. It is hard for it. It's become easy and second nature now, but it was hard for me to have this conversation to the certain level of vulnerability, to put things that I've experienced and tell people, telling the camera, speaking with Ed about it, speaking to my therapist about it. The first few sessions, like, I was like, I was probably wasting money. You know what I mean? Yeah, because I'm talking to this, like, I'm gonna let him know what I actually want him to know, and then he'll figure it out from there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, him being like who he is, and a respected elder and a brother, he, opened these doors and gave me these tools to be like, okay, with like having these conversations. And now I'm able to have like certain conversations with people that I wasn't able to have before. Mm-hmm. It was surface and 3 feet deep. It was kiddie pool deep. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it wasn't, I'm jumping off that diving board into that deep end. You know what I'm saying? It was a certain level that I'm gonna let you get to, before I push you away. And if you keep pushing, and the more the more closer you think you're getting to me, the further away you get.
Yeah, I mean, good therapy for black men should feel like a barbershop experience. It should feel like when you just got your hair cut. For me, it should feel like a chicken wing conference with your homeboys, right? So good therapy not only provides a space for you to feel vulnerable, but good therapy for black men allows you to see missed opportunities. It allows you to reframe certain realities, belief systems that you've had. It allows you to unpack and process through traumas. You know what I'm saying? So good therapy is all about mental liberation and identity congruence, where you have the balance to show up as yourself everywhere you go and be comfortable in your skin everywhere you go. So that should be the goal of like good therapy for black men, psychological balance, and in the psych world we call it identity congruence.
And just, I think that so we understand that the importance, the importance of getting here. This not only can be a life or death conversation because this can save somebody, but this can also be a life or living. You know what I mean? Because we can still have life but not really be living.
Oh.
You know what I mean? You have a.
I need a Martin Luther King church fan for that one.
You have it's a certain level of truly living that we're able to do without like having this like this weight to off of our shoulders. And I think that for me it has been extremely helpful to like start getting that weight off my shoulders. Like, you know what I mean? Oh. It weighed so heavy that I was a person like embarrassed. The more like successful or these accomplishments, I was embarrassed by it. Like I was cool working behind the scenes. Like, hey, you know, the big Suge mantra, like, let the stars be stars. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be no star. You know what I mean? Or people come to you and be like, yo, man, you did such and such X, Y, Z. And I'm like, I'm embarrassed if you're talking about this. You know what I mean? Like, and people come like, yo, Mr. One Music Fest. I'd be like, nah, that's Jay. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my partner, ain't me. You know what I mean? Don't look at me like that. Like, you know what I mean? But then I had to like get to the point to where I understand, like, it's not like this ugly, like, paint. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay to have like a certain level of attention for the accomplishments because other people are looking at these accomplishments and that is motivation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I didn't look at that. I looked at they looking at me, and with that, with them looking at me personally, they don't see what I accomplished. They see me. They like see like this ugly, you know, these things inside or these things that happen. They look at this person who was like, you know, homeless or who grew up with, you know, that with a parent that's battled addiction, you know what I mean, my entire life. You know what I mean? Yeah. This person that, you know, had all, you know, school clothes was like my cousins and second, like hand-me-downs and all of that. I just made them, you know, had to make them look fresh. You know what I mean? This person who, you know, experienced these things, you know what I'm saying? Like, who battled, you know, all of these different things. I looked at like, this is what people look at. This is what people see. You know what I mean? And so when they seeing that, I didn't, you know what I mean, understand that. I looked at those things like, you know, there should be like this cloak of armor, like, oh, this is, you know, tough, like whatever. But in all actuality, like those things weigh heavy on me. Because as I progressed professionally and traveled and met other people in other places, and I'm like, oh, like, when I was living in that, it was okay because in my mind, everybody lived like this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it was like, it's no, like, I don't have to be embarrassed because, or I don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, everybody, you know, or they understood, right? But then when I go as I expanded and going on the road and then being in, going to school and moving to Atlanta and meeting all these interesting people, and I'm like, and I'm having conversations, and people looking at me like, the hell is this nigga talking about? Like, you did what? You experienced what?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, didn't everybody? Hell no.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. And I started being like, oh man, started being embarrassed by this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then that embarrassed became like this angst. And then, I'm embarrassed by, like, I'm not celebrating the win. I'm focused on the losses, right?
Yeah.
My motivation in life wasn't this whole let's make a lot of money. My motivation was like, I ain't never trying to be this person. I ain't never trying to go back there again.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
But you fighting traumas that we overcome are and still battle and carry with us can lead to feelings of inadequacy. And so that's why I would say good therapy for black men is about psychological balance, because when you're going through trauma, you feel inadequate. There's like you're out of place, or out of sorts, or out of your skin, because you're reconciling so many different things. And so good therapy places you in a position to analyze that, see what happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Realize that it was okay. And if anything, you resilient as hell because of what you went through. And instead of being inadequate, taking a strengths-based approach and say, hell, the fact that you went through all of that makes you more successful in the entertainment industry because you know how to rise up. So that's what counseling does, is also reframe your experiences.
And listen, it's giving me so much understanding and help. Like, understanding me, understanding, us, understanding people, understanding like why, we think and why I thought the way that I approach some things and that. And again, I tell anybody, like, one thing we want to get accomplished with this is, just, you don't have to be this person who goes to therapy each week and everything, but, seek some level of help, like some a mental awareness. And it will open up so many doors, and it's funny. So with us, I was like, you know what? And I didn't discuss this with Ed, but I was like, yeah, I think every, episode we do, I want to like give like some help, or like this little help things that helped us. And Sean brought these 2 books that I actually read, that I love and it helped me. This book, this Battle Cry, it's a book by Jason Wilson, and I originally I hipped him because I saw him on like the Breakfast Club or something like that, and he was talking about his battle with depression, mental health, and everything, and I was like, oh wow. And so I went and got his book, and it's funny because I called my little brother, but I'm like, you should get this. He was like, I had this book for a while, like, this book helped me, like, and then this book, what I'm saying, Cut Dead but Still Alive, right? Caring for African American Young Men by Gregory Ellison, right? And it's funny because I read this book, and this cat comes in and he says, man, what you know with this book? You went and bought the book after I told you about it? And I was like, nah, man, I've been had this book. You know what I mean? I actually, there's this bookstore in Brookhaven that I just go and hang out times, and I just search books and just buy it. It's a secondhand bookstore, and I just hang out in there and just, and this was one of the books, and I got it. This was like, I don't even know if it was like, I think it was pre-pandemic, but it was like one of those like snow days or something.
Okay.
Right. And I was like able to, I was like, man, we ain't gonna be able to do nothing, snow coming. And I was able to like go to the store right quick. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, all right, dang, the bookstore's open. Let me shoot in here. So I ran in the bookstore, like, let me get a whole bunch of books because we about to be snowed in for a couple of days. And this is one of the books, and I, like, took it home. And I was like, oh, this is what we doing here? Like,
man, I'm getting emotional because, like, you got to look at this. Like, Cut Dead was still alive. Reverend Dr. Gregory Ellison, to show you how me and Moetown are bonded, I had no idea he had read the book. This is my homeboy. I'm talking about like high school, hooping at his house, hooping in the neighborhood. High school homie, Reverend Dr. Gregory Ellison, who teaches at Candler Theological Seminary. That's Emory University. They're Candler Theological Seminary. But the first line of my dissertation is a quote from this particular book.
wow.
So that tells you how divine order this experience is. But what I like about Cut Dead But Still Alive is that Reverend Dr. Ellison takes that notion of invisibility that, you know, Ralph Ellison talked about, an invisible man, and he gives it a different framework, which is being cut dead but still alive. Basically, everything we go through as black men is like a series of psychological deaths. Get pulled over by the police, trauma you experience, trauma I experience, right? And so we're still reconciling it. So we're cut dead, we bleeding, but we still alive. You know what I'm saying? So those little indignities that we experience every day and try to reconcile is that psychological dilemma of being cut dead but still alive. So what I like about it is that it gives you tools. And so like Moetown said, we're going to give you tools in order to move forward. So it says caring for African American young men, because it also talks about resiliency, African-centered strategies, and strength-based approaches to healing for black men. And one of the things that he talks about, we already mentioned, the benefit of life experience in working with other brothers.
Right. So with that being said, this is episode 1 of Reclamation Point. This is the first episode of the many. Thank you to U42 for supplying this platform for us to be able to do it. Thank you to my brother Ed, Dr. Ed Garnes. You got to get so used to saying that. My brother is a doctor. You know what I'm saying? Thank you to Dr. Ed Garnes. And thank you to the ancestors and the creators for allowing us to be here and opening up that platform for us. And so this is episode 1. We'll see you next episode or wherever, however we close.
Yeah.
This is something new for us, so we won't know how to close. But, you know, we'll close it with, hey, listen, check out episode 2, 3, 4, and 5. We hope to continue to be a platform and be a beacon and give other people opportunities to seek help and, you know, and reclaim their mental wellness. So, you know, thank you. And Reclamation Point.
Man, I say good times. We just tryna make some good vibes. And we not losing no more.